live the life beyond the boundaries we set on ourselves, to live and to run boundless, to be inspired, to achieve, to overcome the mountaintop in our life. Embrace the journey, become boundless.
Good morning, Trail Fam. Welcome to the Live, Run, Boundless podcast created by the one and only Kenneth Pinckney. I'm Isabella, aka Ultra Izzy B, and I will be your co-host today. We have a very special treat for you all and are pumped to have on the show today Jeff Bronco Billy Browning. Jeff is an ultra legend with over 19 years of competitive ultra running, has finished over 150 ultras, and holds the record for the third most wins for the 100-mile distance, including wins at Hard Rock 100, Bighorn 100, Hurt 100, SD 100, and many more. He is currently training for the Western States, where he's already compiled 4 consecutive top 10 finishes. He is also an endurance running coach, where he coaches elite runners such as Mike McKnight and non-elite runners such as myself, Izzy B. Jeff, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to dive right into the questions. So let's giddy up.
Giddy up. Let's do it.
Tell the Trail Fam here a little about yourself. You go by Bronco Billy, life growing up, all that sort of thing.
Well, I grew up in a 700-acre farm in Missouri. So I grew up in rural Missouri in the 70s and 80s. That dates me a little bit. But we lived 7 miles outside of town, of a town of 4,700 people. I grew up playing, traditional sports, baseball and basketball and track and field and football. Football was like the primary sport in my town. The life revolved around Friday nights in the fall. And every sport trained you for football. Hard work. I started working when I was on the farm, when I was 10 or 11, just helping and running for tools and odd jobs for my grandfather and my dad who farmed together. My grandfather always lived a quarter mile away, my grandma and grandpa. So I had a very kind of cool upbringing in that I kind of was able to run free. I lived 6 miles outside of town. We had a huge farm and there were creeks and woods and fields, and you were constantly, I just had a long leash. My parents had the old traditional one-room schoolhouse where I grew up. There was about 3/4 of a mile from where I grew up, where my grandfather had gone to school. We got the bell, the metal bell from that school when it shut down, and it became a dinner bell or a call Jeff bell. When I was out playing, and that thing was super big iron bell, and my mom would come out and just dong, dong. And you could hear it from 2 miles away. And so you'd be like, okay, I got to run over dinner. And so, I did that, grew up riding 3-wheelers, running a hay crew during high school, and my buddies would be on the hay crew. And so it was a lot of hard work and dirty hard work, and hot, humid hard work, which definitely heat trained me for Western States. In the early days while I was my body was developing. But, I got into, it really was a good early kind of precursor to sport as an adult, because I got into strength training in 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade. My high school coach in the 80s was an early adopter of strength training programs, and we were on the Nebraska strength training program from 7th, 8th grade on. We lifted 4 days a week, year round. So all growing up while I was developing, I was throwing iron around in the weight room. We were on University of Nebraska strength training program. So, that it was, I didn't, I got in, went into college and I just kept lifting weights. It was such a habit. I was kind of more of a musclehead mountain biker. than I was a runner. I did run. I ran the 800. I won the 800 conference 800 my senior year of high school. But I was so focused on football that track wasn't even on my radar. I mean, I did it because my high school football coach was the track coach, and that was spring training. And I got into mountain biking in college and in like 93, and that the rest is kind of history. I just became like a kind of a dirtbag mountain biker, and that was kind of my focus after that.
Okay. But that's great. I mean, I guess your background growing up kind of prepare you for what you're doing right now, and just just a character builder, did the hard work, and stuff like that.
Castrating pigs is a character builder for sure.
I could relate. I grew up in the country, in a small town in South Carolina. We had to raise pigs, slaughter the pigs, barbecue the pigs, and we got the bed pulled pork barbecue around, and so so I know about working in crop and tobacco, all that, so yeah.
I went to we toured a tobacco farm when I was in middle school.
Yeah.
And we snuck off and took a leaf out of the field and put it between our cheek and gum. I never got so sick. Oh man. Just straight tobacco leaf, like put it in my, like right out of the field. Oh man, the bus ride home sucked.
Oh man, so that was a learning curve for you. You don't shoot tobacco like that.
No, you don't. Oh yeah.
That was great. You probably never touched tobacco since then, probably. I know.
Yeah, and we were kind of a traditional farm, so we were like our commercial farm. So it was like soybeans, corn, wheat, Milo, that kind of stuff, and just like a lot of hay because we had livestock, we had cattle and hogs.
Yeah.
So we were doing straw bales, hay bales.
Yeah.
Running. I ended up, by the time I was in high school, I ended up being kind of the go-to person for that kind of stuff, like running a hay crew for my dad.
I like that, and so you more than just a runner. You could do all, still real farmer. I like that. So
yeah, it's good hard work.
Yes. So when do you realize trail running or racing would have been your career?
Well, I mean, it kind of organically happened because when I got into the sport in 2001, so it's been what, 20 years. This is my 21st season. Yeah, it's been a long time. There was no money in the sport, there wasn't, and I got into it more for the adventure side. Like I came from like mountain biking, backpacking, climbing, that kind of stuff. And so I had a buddy that got me kind of hooked on, or to try ultras. And I always had been running. I'd always been running like 20, 30 minutes with my dog, 3 or 4 days a week. And then mountain biking mainly. I was just so focused on mountain biking.
Yeah.
It just kind of, over 3 or 4 years, at first it was just finishing them, top 30% or whatever, I was in the top 30% of the pack back then. And then all of a sudden, fast forward 10 years of running and training and getting into them and loving it and loving the community. And, I think that's one of the reasons that ultra running is so special is the greater community of what it is.
Yes.
And I think that's what attracted me to the sport in the first place, even versus mountain biking or climbing. It was just kind of this cool, we all meet up in cool mountain towns and go run and get supported while we go run through the mountains. And I think the combination of mountain biking and climbing and backpacking, that the idea of like taking all of those disciplines of the one of the things I like about mountain biking is how much you could cover, ground you could cover in training or in a ride in the mountains. But you always were restricted on some places where you could go, either based on how steep the terrain was and technical, or it was like wilderness area.
Yeah.
So what it really attracted me to ultra running was like kind of combining all those disciplines into one kind of thing. So you could be like, oh, I can run the same distance I would on a mountain bike, but I can go into the wilderness area and I can climb that mountain.
Yeah.
So then there was the climbing aspect kind of played into it.
Yeah.
So I think that all of that was what really like attracted me to the sport besides the community in the early days. And because there was no, I mean, sponsorship was free shoes and, you know, a kit that you wore, you know, with the logo on it. I mean, that was it. You didn't get paid. There was no paid.
Wow.
And so, you know, I was a graphic designer, went to college to be a graphic designer.
Okay.
You know, growing up on a dirty commercial farm in Missouri made me really want to get a college degree. It's so much hard work for no money.
I know.
Well, the USDA didn't help that, but we won't get into that discussion. That's a rabbit hole. But I'm very strong opinionated on that piece. So if we're ever having a beer somewhere where we're not on camera, I'll give you my true opinions on that. Subsidized, you know, corn and soybeans and all that stuff. Don't get me started. But I mean, basically, you know, like, it just kind of organically grew, you know, like I kept doing it. You know, there was some early, like, kind of butting heads with my wife because it takes so much time to ultra run.
Yeah.
You know, I'm paying for everything I'm doing, you know, I'm not, you know, and I'm racing a lot. And I was sponsored, but, you know, it was, you know, I got sponsored in like 2003. And so I was just getting some shoes and a kit. So it's not like I was, you know, when it finally, like in the, you know, after like 2011, 2012, when I started getting a little tiny stipend, there was this like point of like where I ran into my wife and was like, I got a check. It's no longer a hobby. She used to always remind me it's a hobby. She's like, ultrarunning's a hobby. And I'm like, I know, but you know, but I was so geeky about it. And like, I was so into it. It just like kind of enveloped my life on the side, outside of graphic design. And those two butted heads a lot because graphic design's really hard. I mean, Izzy's in marketing. She knows like marketing and design, graphic design are like, it's deadline driven, it's client driven. So clients are like, I need this today. And you're like, okay. Otherwise, they're going to go find someone else that's going to pay them.
Of course.
You know, and they'll pay them. So like, you know, and I had my own business in Bend, Oregon at the time. And from 2001 through 2017. And so I was kind of an entrepreneur and trying to run my own business and raise a family. And my wife decided she wanted to homeschool. So we had decided early on as a team that like, you know, I'm going to make the money. You're going to homeschool. Nice. And you know, and raise the kids. I mean, I'm raising kids too, because I'm working out of the house and I'm there, but you know, I'm very focused during the business day of like taking care of business, you know, like making sure that I'm, you know, customer service is good and all that kind of stuff. So, but you know, sometimes those two butt heads, if I needed to be in a big training block and I had a ton of deadlines one week, there wasn't a lot of sleep. I was getting sleep deprivation training during those weeks, but that's kind of how it happened organically. And then, you know, slowly the money, it was more and more money once social media was a big thing and more eyes on product and on brands. It was easier for, you know, to be able to get more money. And for it to be not, you know, I mean, I can't make a career out of running because I couldn't support a family. I have 3 kids. I can't support a family of 5 on organic food. You know, on a running salary. So, you know, that's a really small salary. So maybe if I was dirt bagging out the back of my truck by myself, I might be able to make ends meet. But, you know, everybody out there that wants to be sponsored, you're not going to get rich in ultra running. But I mean, it helps supplement. It helps supplement the time. It helps supplement, you know, and then it turned into a coaching career. So, which was, you know, I never expected to have a, you know, change careers in my 40s. So,
I can't relate. You know, I'm in my 40s, you know, so, I tell my age now too. It's all good. So it just we never know what the unexpected gonna come, but just going with it, you know.
You're just rolling with whatever happens, you know, and it's been a cool ride. I mean, it's just been organic and it just happened. I didn't force anything. It just kind of, you know, there was a season when I was like, well, I think I want to start taking on some coaching clients. And I took 5 on at first and learned my processes. And then, you know, that organically grew. And then I had to back off on graphic design projects, which was nice because in my 40s, after 20 plus years of a career, I was getting to the point where there's some projects I was just like not into, and I was just jaded a little bit. You know, at first you're like, I'm designing and I'm being creative. Awesome. I'm getting paid for it. But then after 20 years, you're like, I only want to work on the products and the services that I would actually use. You know, you sometimes get clients that you're like, I would never use their product. And I don't even really want to learn about their product, but I have to. So yeah, right. It's a little soul sucking. And so, you know, I was so into nutrition and strength and mobility and running and training, and I've been reading like crazy my whole career, you know, so 17 years of like being a geek on the side about deep dives on training and everything else, and racing and doing it, testing and stuff on myself. It really just kind of organically happened. And it was like a great, like, it just like one door opened and the other door slowly shut. That's
great. You know, it kind of leads to my second question. You kind of answered that already. Well, was there a second or third option if a backup plan of your running career didn't work out? Well, you kind of asked me that.
Yeah, it's graphic design. I mean, I would have just kept doing designing. I mean, I have to say though, it was a welcome change, for sure. You know, I kind of already touched on that, but you know, I was ready. I was just ready to make a change, and it's so rewarding coaching, and you know, it's just a really good, you know, helping people like fix their nutrition or you know, fix their running, you know, if they've been chronically injured, you know, all those kind of things. It's just so many different things that are rewarding, and you know, the stoke factor is high, and it's good.
Awesome. Same thing for that. A good to have a backup plan, you know, good. I mean, but good that your running career has lasted this long, you know, and you've been like at the top of the district ultra running for 2 years now. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I feel pretty blessed. Yes, for sure.
So 19 years, almost 20 years probably, as a competitive ultra runner. Over 120 ultramarathon finishes. That's crazy. Or to think about it. So what keeps you going? How do you keep your body in the best possible condition? You know, and then to keep going as long as you have.
Well, it's a good thing. Most of us are type A, ultra runners are type A addictive personalities that we've just funneled our addiction. I mean, that's my theory. I think we're all just addicted. We would be like drug addicts if we weren't ultra running, you know, or something. You know, I'm so, I don't know. I think part of it's become a lifestyle.
Okay.
It's a lifestyle habit. You know, I don't feel normal if I don't train. If I don't get my run in, I don't feel normal, right? So I also have always used training in the mountains. I've always lived somewhere. Since I got into ultra running, I was in Bend, Oregon, then Logan, Utah, Bozeman, Montana, and now Flagstaff. All mountain towns. So I've always had trails right out the door pretty much.
Okay.
And so the access has always been good for me. And it's always been a stress reliever from everything else in life.
Yeah.
Whether it's a time just to be that meditative time. I rarely run with music. I do occasionally, and I'll listen to a podcast sometimes, or I might, you know, listen to music, but it's very rare. And I just like to be in my own thoughts. And so for that time, it's my time every day. If it's an hour run or a 45-minute run, or it's a 5-hour run, I can just be, and I train a lot by myself, and you know, 90% solo. So it's just that time for me to like work through things, you know, whether it's coaching, whether it's family life, whether, you know, am I being a good dad? You know, those kind of things. Do I feel guilty because I'm taking so much time in the mountains running, or whatever, you know, or working too much, or just focused on other things, not being engaged or something, you know, those kind of thoughts of that meditative, like, that's one thing I love about running, is just that free form thought that can just happen when you're aerobic training, you know, because you should be 80-90% of your volume should be an aerobic zone. So that's in that conversational pace zone where you can like, the mind can just wander and like work through things and have ideas. And, you know, sometimes I always carry my phone and on airplane mode, and I'll just open notes and like have all these ideas for coaching, or for one of my athletes I'm coaching who I just talked to, and or you know, whatever. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of an entrepreneur at heart, so I've always kind of been self-employed. I mean, I've only worked, you know, out of 25 years in the work world, you know. I've only worked maybe 7 years for other people on a salary. The rest of the time I've been making my own way. So when you're like that, you're always thinking, how can I improve my business? How can I make it more scalable? You know, all these ideas. So the other things that keep me motivated, I guess, would be, I don't know. I just have this fire that I don't, it doesn't extinguish.
You just love to run.
I love to run. I love to compete. I mean, I'm competitive with my kids in like a board game, you know, like I'm going to bury them. I'm like, this is real life here. Like if we're playing life, which we did this week at the kitchen table, like I like to win. You know, so I'm not going to lay back playing them. I'm going to teach them real life lessons. Like I'm not going to let them win. You know, or if we're playing soccer in the park, you know, like I'm going to go hard. And so, you know, like I'm going to make them work for it. And that's the life lesson. Like things don't come easy. You have to work for them, and you're not always going to get them. Or it's not always going to work out. And you got to learn to live with that. And I think that's one thing that ultra running really teaches. You know, is these really cool life lessons of like you can't just jump off the couch 2 weeks before a 100 miler like you can in a 5K. Ultra running teaches that you have to put in the work. And I think that you know, the things that motivate me are, one is like, maybe it's vanity a little bit. I don't know. I mean, it might be, you know, it might be ego part of it, you know, after racing for so many years, you know, I don't want to give it up. But I'm also interested now that I turned 50 this summer. I really like, I'm interested in longevity. That's really become a focus in my late 40s, is like, how long can I keep this going? You know, what do I need to do to keep it going? I know I can't just run, you know, I know there's mobility and strength and nutrition, and all three of those are a huge piece that a lot of athletes kind of neglect. Especially ultra runners. A lot of ultra runners just run. But I feel like those things and that foundation of, like I was talking about doing Nebraska strength training program in high school, that foundation of strength has carried and served me well through, you know, that's what fixed me when I was having a ton of injuries in the early days. That's what's fixed a ton of my athletes I coach who have had kind of chronic injuries, is like embracing the strength piece of things and trying to get them to buy in on that concept. I think that's a really important piece of my coaching business, is the mobility and strength thing, because I see that as like an important piece of my longevity and fixing early injuries that I had in the first 5-6 years of the sport. You know, I had runner's knee, IT band syndrome, you know, SI joint stuff. You know, all these plantar fasciitis, you know, all these issues that I was able to fix with strength training and working on muscle imbalances. And the average person, you know, had they been like not as focused as I was, probably would have said, I'm just not a runner. But I was never willing to accept that. I was like, no, there's got to be a fix. I got to be able to fix it. And you got to figure out what the root cause is. And, you know, and sometimes I had to go to a third party to figure out what it was. And some stuff I could read and research and figure it out myself. So it just depends. Sometimes it's easy to find, and sometimes it might take a whole season to figure it out, you know? And it's never done, right? If you have an injury, this is a good lesson to everyone listening out there, that if you're fighting an injury right now, don't give up. Like, be encouraged and keep searching to figure out what's going on. If the path you're looking at right now isn't working, well, go look at another path. Go to a different PT. You know, go to someone else, get someone else's opinion. Try to figure it out and come at it from different angles until you figure out what that is. And then once you figure it out, it probably took years for that issue to come up and arise by muscle imbalances or bad movement patterns or whatever. And if you can take that and just figure it out, and then you're going to have to be diligent for years, because that's a chronic issue that is unique to you. And you have to figure out, like, okay, well, I mean, Izzy knows about this, right? Mm-hmm. She has a hip thing that constantly kind of rears its ugly head. And if she doesn't do the mobility and the rolling and the strength and everything that goes along with like supporting that issue and dealing with it, if she neglects it, it pops up again. And so you constantly have to be on it. And once you can figure that out, then you're on the road to recovery, but that recovery may be years. So you have to be patient and diligent. It's another life lesson of ultra running.
And I lift weights.
And she lifts weights. He's bought into my brainwashing.
Well, I'm like you. I had to lift weights in high school. They put us in the weight room with the football players.
Exactly. And once you kind of get the revelation that it works, it's great. You know, that you should not neglect it.
Okay. Great advice, you know, because I'm a late bloomer into running, trail running. Hopefully I done one ultra trail running so far through the years I've been running, you know, so they didn't turn out too well, but yeah. but that's another story itself. But just learning, trying to get better, see what works, you know. Yeah, so I could continue to stay fit also, you know.
Yeah.
Stay in shape. Yes, definitely. May seek more advice for that. You know. So during your 19 years career in racing, I might say, what is one race that stuck out to you? All the races you've done, and you've done a lot. It could have been like a race that went smooth, nothing went wrong. It could be like one of the toughest races you had, or just one. I mean,
I think I probably would pick the toughest.
Okay.
Just because when things don't go according to plan,
yes,
that's when you learn the most. And so I would have to say Hard Rock 2007, my first Hard Rock. You know, I have 4 finishes at Hard Rock now. But the first time I showed up to the San Juans, I'd never been to the San Juans. Mm-hmm. I'd never run in the San Juans, never stepped foot in the San Juans.
Yeah.
I didn't know how big that course was. I didn't respect the course.
Yeah.
I had a little too much ego and not enough humility that year. I had won my first 100 in 2005 at Bighorn, and then came back in 2006 and won again and got the course record.
Yeah.
And I kind of had a little bit of an ego going into 2007. That I was like, well, I can go compete with, you know, Scott Jurek and Carl Meltzer. And that's the year Jurek got the record in the harder direction. And Carl chased him and I chased them and the first 40 miles, and I blew up like nobody's business. It was bad. I slept in a Steve Larson, who, you know, passed away. Yeah. Oh, he was a amazing cyclist and mountain biker and Northern National champ, and then went into triathlon. Mm-hmm. So 3 different pro sports: road cycling, mountain biking, and triathlon. Anyway, he was my neighbor in Bend, Oregon, and we trained together. And he had an old, this is, you know, 2007. He had an old altitude tent. I'd slept in his altitude tent, or rented it from him. Yeah. I slept in his altitude tent for a month, thought I was like totally ready for altitude. I mean, I didn't have that little, you should always respect the mountains.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the whole thing that happened in China, you know, last weekend or whatever, it is a good reminder to all ultra runners that it's our responsibility, not the race, but our responsibility to be prepared for whatever's going to be thrown at you.
Yes.
And that leads me to another side story on Hard Rock from 2014, when they had the bad storms and we got pinned down by lightning, you know, in American Basin for 70 minutes at mile 100, at mile 60 something. I mean, you have to be prepared to sit and wait out a storm for however long that might take.
Yes.
And that means no movement. And all of a sudden you can go hypothermic really quickly.
Yes.
And that was a lesson. I had just enough gear to freeze my butt off, but not get hypothermia.
Wow.
But that taught me from that point forward, from 2014 on, don't respect the mountains, be prepared for the worst case scenario, and don't just go into it like cavalier. So that's a good lesson for all of us. And it should be a reminder that we should always be prepared. And then, go back to 2007, I was hypoxic. Knowing what I know now about training, I was totally hypoxic. I bet my O2 sat level was like 78 or something. It was horrible. I was falling asleep on my feet at mile 50, because when your O2 saturation levels in your blood's like so low, you're falling asleep on your feet. And I took a nap at Chapman for 45 minutes. It took me to go from Telluride to Chapman, which is like 9 miles, it took me 4.5 hours. And I was in third and fourth the first half of the race. So like, I just went to I could not keep it together. But the lesson in this, and what I learned from it is that, and one of the reasons I only have one DNF in 150 plus ultramarathons, is that you don't give up. You just, if you're under the cutoff, try to fix it. A lot of times a sleep will fix it. Even if it's a 45-minute nap, it might be a 3-hour nap. Whatever that is, reset and then continue. And that's what I did. I slept for 45 minutes. I got up and it was daylight all of a sudden outside. And I stumbled out of there for 200 or 300 meters and could barely move, and you feel like you're on stick legs, like they're super stiff and you're like, oh my God. And then everything loosens up and you start moving again. And then that sleep just was enough to recharge me and able to finish the race. So, my own mantra or motivator for me to not DNF has always been my family. You got to find whatever works for you out there. But mine has always been I take time away from my 3 kids and my wife to train a ton. And when I could be spending time with them during that training time, and, I owe it to them to see it through. And if I don't, what am I teaching my kids? Oh, when it gets hard, you quit. When it doesn't go according to plan, you quit, you give up. No, that's a horrible lesson as a father. So why would I teach anyone that? So that's always a motivator for me during races. My rule is it's got to be life-threatening or an injury to drop. And that's why I only have one DNF, because it was a rolled ankle. And I tried to go on it for 50K. It was UTMB, and I'd pay all this money to go to Europe and bring my family for 3 weeks and see France. And oh man, it was really bummer. It was hard to drop, but it was 15 years at that point with no drops. I had no DNFs, and I was just I had this streak going, and I was I didn't want to break the streak. But I'm glad I did. In hindsight, it was the smartest thing I did, because I ran UTMF 4 weeks later and got third. So, it was a good call at the time, but it was hard to make. So, hopefully that speaks to someone out there.
Yeah, definitely. I think you will. And just learn it from it. Just learn it from a life lesson, Even though then I get it, how I want to say it, you seem like you failed, but just would have set up for your next race, Yeah,
if I had pushed on for another 50 some miles on a bum ankle, I would have been out for
months,
probably a month, right? 4 to 6 weeks versus being out for 4 or 5 days and then back running within a week. It was still swollen at UTMF a little bit, and I taped it and everything else to keep me from re-rolling it, but it held up and it was fine. And, so it was a good call in the end, but it was hard to make at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Understand.
Because I was so fit that year.
I know.
I didn't, it's UTMB.
Yeah, I know that got me
You're in Europe.
That'd have been hard.
Yeah, and you're in Europe and you're in the Alps. It's so awesome.
All right, question number 7. So what has running taught you in everyday life?
How to manage my time.
Yeah, balancing family,
I mean, I think
work.
time management's a big piece, especially for you folks out there like me that have a full-time job and you're training and you got kids and you got soccer games and everything else to go to. You know, like you can't have a hard schedule. Okay. It has to be fluid. You have to be able to go, can't, you know, like normally I run long runs on Fridays. I've always had kind of made my own schedule, and I'll work extra during the week at night to make up for my Friday off. Okay. And there's less people in the mountains, and then I got the weekend with the family. Yes. And the one thing that I like today, we have a homeschool like picnic at noon or 11:30. So I have to run later today. I have to evolve that plan. Like I would want to be running right after this interview, you know, in the prime time of the day and be back, you know, with plenty of time for the evening, but I'm going to have to run into the evening a little tonight for a long run. And that's fine. You evolve it, right? I think the other thing that ultra running teaches, that hard work and dedication and consistency pays off. Yeah. You know, and that's like with anything in life, you know, not everything comes easy. Not everything comes quickly. Yeah. And sometimes there are a lot of road bumps, you know, like setbacks that you don't anticipate, and you have to be willing to roll with them to move on. And not everything is, and you know, like just like we were talking about injuries earlier, you know, like sometimes they just pop up and you're not expecting them. And sometimes they're 3 or 4 weeks from your A race. Yeah. I got an athlete right now that's fighting a knee thing that popped up in his peak training. Yeah. And we have to evolve his training to like not aggravate that thing, you know, and then, you know, make sure he knows that like, hey, don't stress about it. Yeah. It's okay. You know, like, you know, it's like a little bit of mind game too. You have to like control the fear and the anxiety that goes along with like, oh my God, it's my peak 3 weeks out. I should be like doing doubles this weekend or 3 long runs or whatever. And just reassuring that a lot of times you just need reassurance that like, hey, it's okay. It's not, you've had all this big training up to it. You've had plenty of racing or running and big runs and tons of volume. So this is just the icing on the cake that we put in the last little bit. And it's not a big deal. Like it's better to go in 10% undertrained than 1% overtrained. Yeah. So hard work and dedication.
Hard work and dedication.
And time management.
And time management.
I'm with you too. Every Friday I do lunch with my dad, and I'm just going to have to run later, but it's fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
So I guess you kind of answered the next question on how do you manage being an ultra athlete with family life. So you kind of already answered that. So I'll move on to question number 9.
I would say this. I would want to put this out there. I have a very patient, understanding wife.
Okay.
She's not a runner, and she understands. You know, one of the things that we butted heads a lot in the early days. Yes. Because it was a hobby. It's a hobby. She would remind me it's a hobby. You know, but I think one of the things that we came to terms with is she realized how passionate I was about this sport. Yes. And how much it meant to me. Yes. And being a really cool person that she is, and understanding person that she is, she was able to like finally come to terms with like, this is who he is. Yes. I didn't expect this. There you go. As an adult husband, chasing all this stuff. I don't think she expected that, you know, when we got married, I wasn't an ultra runner, you know, we met in college and in 93. And we've been married since 97. So we've been together a long, long time. And, you know, we just had our 24th wedding anniversary. So she understands that it's important to me, and that therefore makes it important. It's important to her as well. And she's really embraced supporting me in this. And especially since it's evolved into a career and coaching and the athlete thing, there's actually some, you know, little bit of money in it now. that helps like soften the blow.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of comments like when I'm playing with the kids or roughhousing, they're like, she's like, watch his legs.
Can't get hurt.
They
So
put
what you're
food on our
saying
table.
is,
Don't hit his legs. Watch his knees.
so what you're saying is all I have to do is show a paycheck to my husband and then it'll be cool.
I don't know, man. That depends on your relationship.
So my wife's going to be waiting for that paycheck for a long, long time. That's great that your wife able to come realize that this is what you love to do, this is what you enjoy doing it. This will probably keep you sane, you know. And just but yeah, you know, and she got the support from her. And
well, I think another side note with life is that one of the things that, because I've always been, well, for 20 plus years, I've been self-employed.
Yes.
I've been able to somewhat manage my own schedule,
Okay.
which meant I could run at off-peak times that, you know, of the normal person. So one of the things in the early days when we had kids, when we had little kids, especially starting in 2002, we now have an almost 19-year-old, is my oldest. But when they were little, you know, I ran at night. I would go, once the kids were in bed and everybody was settled down, and I'd taken care of dad duties. Like I was out the door at 9 or 10 o'clock at night to get my training run in, or I would do it at lunch on my lunch break, you know, or I would squeeze it in wherever I could. And a lot of people have asked my wife over the years, you know, how have you been able to balance all this?
Yes.
And she's like, well, I didn't really notice he was running sometimes, you know, because he would like just run up crazy hours and just get less sleep.
Okay.
Now that I'm 49, I want my sleep.
Yeah.
But I do have older kids now. So like, you know, I can train on Saturday mornings again, you know, because my kids are like, oh, I want screen time on Saturdays, Saturday mornings, and we'll give them screen time on Saturday mornings and I go run. And that keeps them out of her hair for Saturday mornings, and she can just hang out and have coffee and read a book, and I can go run in the mountains. So, you know, we found our balance and what works for us, and everyone has a different dynamic, and you have to figure out what works for you, you know?
That's awesome.
So you're also an endurance coach. What does it mean for you to see the people you coach succeed in their running careers?
I mean, that's the coolest thing. And, you know, I touched on this earlier when we were talking about career stuff and graphic design versus coaching. You know, there's definitely a reward. You know, it's cool to see people, you know, because I coached kind of a little niche of like optimized fat metabolism for some people that are interested in and kind of high fat, low carb diet, paleo primal blueprint type diet. I definitely, that's a rewarding piece because, you know, I have athletes that, you know, back down, you know, lose 30, 40 pounds. And it's really cool, you know, like they just to have a video chat like we're doing now and like, you know, talk to them every 3 weeks, you know, in person and like see their face, you know, it's like, whoa, you know, like it's just like, and it helps their confidence and it helps, obviously it helps their running because for every pound you lose, your VO2 max increases. So it helps your VO2 max. And I think that's been a rewarding piece. You know, people like, you know, getting a better physique because of strength training, if they never did that before, and the difference, you get so much bang for your buck when you've not done it at all. And then all of a sudden you just do some, all of a sudden you know, you have better body image. I think those are really rewarding. And just seeing people like, you know, change over, you know, I've had some athletes I've been coaching 4 or 5 years straight, you know, and to have that relationship for 4 or 5 years and to see them evolve as mentally, physically, everything, you know. I'll give you a side example of one of my lady athletes I coached for a long time. And when she first came to me, like mindset was weak, you know, like everything derailed her. She freaked out at one of our coaching camps in the San Juans, where a full breakdown on the side of a mountain, you know, crying and scared and like of exposure and everything else, literally curled into a ball on the side of the mountain in the dirt. And me standing over her, reassuring her it's going to be okay, but you're getting to the top of this thing.
That's right.
And I made her push through it.
Yeah.
And she got to the top, and I helped her get down one step at a time. I mean, she was terrified.
Oh yeah.
I mean, full like, when the mental block is there and you can't, your physical won't even step up to the plate because your mental's so scared.
I can relate.
It shuts down even your coordination.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is that I kept working with her over the years. And the next year she came back to the camp, and she was one of the first people up that thing leading other people.
Wow.
And then, fast forward a couple more years and she's backcountry skiing. She's skiing off volcanoes in the Northwest,
oh my goodness.
And with ice axes and everything else, she's a totally different person.
Wow.
And that's like a quick example of like the rewarding piece of coaching.
Yeah.
To see someone like just blossom.
Yeah.
Going, being under someone who, her parents told her whole life probably that, hey, they were like probably hovered, like, don't do that. Be careful. Oh my God, be careful. You see those parents all the time now who hover. I grew up in a farm where it was like, yeah, you're all right. It's not severed. It's just bleeding.
That's right.
Just put some pressure on it.
Yeah, that's right.
When you grow up on a farm like that, there's dangerous stuff everywhere, but no one was like hovering.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I was an early parent with my first was kind of a hoverer. I'm the hoverer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with my own kids. Yeah. And I've had to learn to my wife is like, back off. She's like, they're all right, but I think one thing I notice is my oldest is a little more of like he freaks out, because I was a hoverer. I caused that probably. Yeah. And I have to live with that as a parent, and that's one of the things in life you have to live with. If you make stupid mistakes or bad choices, you have to live with those choices because you just trained your kid to be to freak out about stuff. We made the mistake in the early days as a side note. Yeah. And so those new parents out there, don't do this. So we would always say, oh, you're fine. It's not bleeding. Yeah. Well, what happens when it's a little cut and it's bleeding? Well, then all of a sudden it's the big deal, right? So he would be like, it's bleeding. And you're just like, oh, that kind of backfired. So then in the next two, you don't do that. You go, you're fine. It's just bleeding. We don't need stitches or anything. And so, that's just a funny parenting thing that happens. Especially when it's your first, you're always like, the first is always like, you're the most crazy, weird, and you want to protect them from every harm, and you can't do that. Life isn't like that. There's risk in everything we do. And if one thing COVID's taught us, there's a lot of risk, and we can't hide under a rock our whole life.
Yeah. So I guess you learn from your first shower, Yeah. So.
Yeah, you totally do.
Yeah. That's cool. And with coaching, I give credit to my coach all the time for my transformation, and I know Izzy, I know she appreciate you being her coach, Yeah. But I want to put Izzy on the spot right quick. This is what part of the question. So how do Coach Jeff impact you? Your career?
I definitely like our talks every few weeks, just the updates, just to get the feedback. Because, like an ultra runner, I tend to do too much. And I'll race like every 2 or 3 weeks. So, sending them my schedule, say, okay, take out things for me.
The schedule's like this long.
Well, here's my life. Here's the next 2 years schedule. I have to relax. I need someone to tell me to relax. Because us, we don't listen to our husbands. He tells me the same thing, but if a coach tells you, it's different. But and I like his philosophy on weight training and strength training. Not every coach does that, and I would say 90% of the people who run with us, because Kenneth and I run in a lot of the same people, they don't do anything. Nothing. They just run.
Yeah, definitely.
And then they're hurt all the time. It's true. Like,
yeah. You gotta
well, I always, this is a really good one for a side note on strength, because you brought it up. I think that this is a great illustration for those runners out there that like say, do I really need to do strength? You know, one of the things I like about strength is it works strength and through a full range of motion.
Yes.
And so if you're working top of the head, the soles of the feet, right? Upper body, lower body, core. And I mean, as Izzy knows, most of the stuff we do for upper body is push-ups and pull-ups. It's not like rocket science, but at the end of the day, what we really concentrate on core, and we really concentrate on balance and lower body and glute engagement. And one of the things that this is a great illustration for trail running. You know that everyone's done it. That one moment when you're running 10-minute mile and you kick a rock and you're running 5-minute mile to try to not face plant. The person who's been working on strength and mobility will pull out of that move 90+% of the time. The person who doesn't will eat it and be injured. And you still might eat it if you do strength. I mean, I just ate it last week hard, and it hadn't eaten it that hard on the trail for a while. Luckily, I got through it with just some bone bruises and no like movement patterns that were affected too bad, except for a couple days off. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's a great illustration. Like the person who has really good core strength and good like movement patterns when you go out of that outside that range of motion you're used to running, that's when it saves your butt. And you won't get injured and eat it. The other is just the good movement patterns of longevity. Because you got other things firing that are supporting and you have no imbalances, or you're limiting your imbalances. Everybody has imbalances and uniqueness to them. Everyone has a weak side. Everyone has a strong side, you know? But one of the things that these one-legged work that we do, the giddy up circuit, one thing it does is it shows you your weakness, and you'll immediately be like, oh yeah, my left side's bad. Like I'm so wobbly, I can't even stand on one leg. You know, so I think that strength's so important for longevity and just general long-term maintenance of like whatever you want to do, whether it's like helping your spouse lift up the sofa and move it across the living room, right? Or whatever it is, you know, like this week we were pulling old railroad ties. We're renovating a house in Flagstaff right now. And I had my son and my oldest, we pulled out a full, it had been in the ground for probably 30 years.
Oh, wow.
We pulled out a 12-foot railroad tie. And we had to get on both ends and deadlift and lift it into a flatbed trailer to haul it off. And if I had not been doing strength training, I probably would have injured myself. Because that thing was, I mean, that was like a max deadlift to get that thing off the ground.
Wow.
And so like that's another example of like real life. Hey, I'm just doing yard work.
Definitely.
That saved my rear.
It's just this strength training come in handy more than just running, just everyday life. You know?
Everyday life, and playing with your kids at the park is another good example. You know, like I'm almost 50 and I got a 10-year-old who's just like me in a nutshell with energy. And I mean, he wants to go hard all the time. They want to play Frisbee and, you know, they want to play soccer and tag and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, luckily I can move well.
Definitely.
Every once in a while I see like, guys, I've been training hard. This would probably injure me if I go run that hard. So let's do something more mellow today. I need recovery, not going hard. So occasionally I have to tell them, no, I can't do that today.
But hopefully they understand. I like that. So going read your bio and all that. And now I watched that short film you done a few years ago. I guess Mile for Mile. I love it. I love what it was about, and your passion for conservation and protecting our playground. You know, I got a certain playground I like to go to out here in San Diego area. You know, that I love the trails, love nature. You know, it was always the case. You know, but I see how you just want to protect and conserve. So tell the family what people don't know about that passion for yours, why conservation to protect our playground?
Well, I think one thing that always plays into mind with me is that when I go to these like wild places, right?
Yes.
Middle of the mountains somewhere, you know, I just think about like, what will my kids or my grandkids see? Like, what if they wanted to come up here and experience this place I'm experiencing right now?
Yes.
You know what? I want them to experience it in the same state. Now, understanding that nature evolves, right? Fire is a natural part of the environment. I think that's an important piece of education when you're raising kids, is to understand that we can't just like protect and forget, right? Like, because we have private property around and we need to manage, we need to be, you know, we need to be able to manage those forests, right? So there has to be a management plan too. There can't just be a like, let's protect it and not touch it, you know? If we're not going to let fire burn through it naturally, then we have to thin it, you know, like and it has to have controlled burns and all that kind of stuff, right? There has to be management. And so I think education's a big piece for me. Like, I want to educate people on like, what is a healthy forest? Like, fire is part of the natural environment, right? You know, when we look at like, we had, you know, every year we have these catastrophic fires. Part of that is management. You know, like I try to teach my children, hey, one of the reasons that we're having crazy fires is because we have had zero fire tolerance for 150 years. And that is a mismanagement plan. And when we understand that that's a mismanagement, not necessarily caused by something, but caused by man, you know, and understanding that I think education's a big piece for me, the passion for me. And that's, I'm not out there preaching, but if someone's willing to sit down over a beer and listen, I'll talk about it, you know, or if my kids want to talk about it, well, we'll talk about it, you know, or if there's a big fire somewhere near us, we'll talk about it, you know? And I would love to see, just this is a side note, I would love to see us take all that federal dollars that we use right now to fight fires all the time, which is always like, you know, trying to put out fires all the time everywhere they pop up, and take 70% of that those funds and put it towards management. That's one thing I think that we're missing out on. We're missing the point on, because we're constantly just, quote unquote, you know, the old saying, you're just trying to put out fires all the time. That's what we're doing. We're trying to put out fires because we've mismanaged for 150 years. I'd rather see us shift those dollars to fund those teams to go in and control burn and thin a little bit strategically, especially around private property and cities and that kind of stuff. And then we wouldn't have, and then when we had backcountry fires, we have to accept that we've mismanaged for 150 years, and we could let those fires go in the backcountry as long as the perimeters were controlled with controlled burning and thinning and all that stuff around private property. Then we wouldn't have to worry about it taking out a whole neighborhood. So that's where my passion is more, is more as a conservationalist versus maybe a environmentalist. I guess there's a distinction between those two things. So I kind of always seen myself as a conservationalist versus an environmentalist. And so, but I also want to protect those places. And part of that is it, you know, by not doing anything, that's man getting involved, right? By not letting fires burn or whatever that plan is. So I'd like to see more management personally. But you know, at the end of the day, I want to see us pass it on to other generations in a cool, wild state, right? That thrives. And so I guess that's where my passion comes in for that. And then also, you know, my background is farming, growing up in a commercial farm, which is really dirty and not sustainable. And like, we're losing topsoil, and that could be a whole nother conversation piece, because I'm really into like, you know, regenerative agriculture, supporting regenerative agriculture, especially ranching, and getting back to our natural grasslands. And that's one of the things that trip Mile for Mile taught me, was that put on my radar that we had lost 70+% of our natural grasslands in the world to monoculture, to one crop, millions of acres. no biodiversity. Most of them are sprayed, tilled over twice a year, killing tons and tons and tons of mammals. So if you're supporting vegetable growth or you know, vegetables or grain production as like saving the planet, you're misguided. You should do your research a little deeper, because we've lost almost 80% of our natural grasslands and wetlands to monoculture. And that is grain and vegetable production. So understanding that that type of production is not sustainable, we maybe have 70 harvests left on this planet with the topsoil we have. And everywhere monoculture is right now is where there was natural wetlands or grasslands. That's what gets tilled up. And that's where we put one crop on millions of acres. And what I'd like to see is us go back to a lot of natural grasslands that we manage with ranching and herbivores. Okay. So big herds on millions of acres. Yeah. I think that's the true sustainability of the planet, because that's the natural cycle of the way the planet is naturally designed, is to have these giant herds on big grasslands. And it serves as this giant carbon sink as well. So, you know, a grass-fed, grass-finished herbivore is carbon negative. And there's been multiple studies that have shown that in the last 10 years. Now that we're seeing this regenerative push in both agriculture, in grain production, but also like the no-till idea, but also in this, in ranching as well. And like rotating them like they'd be in the wild, you know, wild mimicked or whatever, what we call wild mimicked ranching techniques. You know, white oak pastures is one kind of an example study. There's been a 4-year study at the University of Michigan on this and how it offsets the carbon footprint of the farm, including the whole life cycle of the animal is carbon negative. But if you look at the whole life cycle of the farm, it's actually 85% of the carbon footprint of that farm is offset, because when you grow grass, you're growing soil. And that soil, if there's, you know, Kenneth, you come from like a kind of a smaller town agricultural background too. Yeah. Like a natural, a mature grassland, you know, there's maybe 2 feet of organic material above the ground. There's 10 times that under the ground. And that's it sequesters carbon. So I want to see that movement personally. Yeah. And that's why I'm a passionate animal-based coach, animal-based diet. And so, because it's sustainable, and it's how our natural world works. You know? Anytime man gets involved, he messes it up. So like we've definitely messed it up over the last 100 years with monoculture. So okay, I'm off my soapbox.
That's very interesting, though.
Yeah, it is. So we could do a whole interview on that, you know,
on that alone. And it's really interesting. And for those out there, just go dig into that. You know, regenerative agriculture, white oaks pastures, the Michigan study. It's super interesting, like biodynamic ranching and that kind of stuff.
We do definitely got to take care of nature. We've got to take care of it, you know, to really want to live long. I mean, I would say, I mean, we've got to take care of what we have, what we're given to us, you know.
And part of that's wild mimicking and you know, thinking that it's not going to affect the planet to get rid of 80% of your natural grasslands and wetlands is pretty prideful. To think that it's not going to affect the planet.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree. Thank you for that. You know, just enlighten us and just really get something to really think about, you know. Yeah, so definitely. And so that will lead us to our last question. You know, I'd like to ask everybody, because there's a balance. So we got a chance to think about it for a little bit. So what is your boundless motivation?
I came prepared with this one. I read a quote this week that really stood out to me. The opposite of courage is conformity.
Okay.
And what that means to me is that you don't know what's possible until you think outside the box and try it.
Okay.
part of that's an entrepreneurial spirit that I come from, but and part of that's ultra running, like challenging yourself to like, can I go up that mountain faster? Can I sandwich in 10,000 feet of vert in a 20 miler? You know, whatever that is, you know, can I do that? Can I run faster for this segment on Strava? You know, like whatever that is for you, you know, thinking outside the box, trying it, being willing to not be scared to try, and being okay with failing, because that builds a better mindset. Because knowing that, like, just because you think you might fail, not trying it is the wrong mindset. So having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, I think that's what that teaches. And so much of us are comfortable to conform to the mass, what the masses are doing. And I think COVID's really taught us that too. It's just like, we're willing to just like sit down and like, well, I won't get started on that.
We're going to be drinking a lot of beers when we see you.
Yeah, we should. This is best not being recorded. I'm going to stop right there. There's my 49 years of wisdom coming out. I'll shut up. But at the end of the day, be willing to push yourself. And be okay with failing. And knowing that it's part of the process.
I love that. Great advice. You know, I can relate so much to that. Sometimes I can be stuck in being conformed to the world does. But I learned to embrace who I am. I learned to be different. And
it is okay to be different.
To put myself out there, you know, and for put myself out there, I'm able to connect with so many people, able to be here right now, you know, and interview with you and having Izzy, you know, because I'm willing to step out the box and try something different, you know, and be who I am, you know. So so thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
So it definitely was. So I just appreciate it, you know, for Jeff for spending time with us and taking some time out of your busy time. You know, you're in training mode. You got a race coming out soon, the Western State 100.
Western States, Hard Rock, and Bigfoot 200, the trifecta.
Man, oh wow. It's cool to be surrounded by some great athlete. You know, I call myself just a simple person who love running because I failed my Navy WAN years ago. But that's another story, not about me, but it's about you. And so, and just a privilege to be able to do what I'm doing right now. So thank you again. Also, thank you, Izzy, for being a gracious co-host and be part of this.
Thank you for having me.
It was great to talk to you, y'all. It was fun.
And so, also, Woman Day, anybody want to get in touch, you can get in contact with you, Jeff. How would you do that?
Just go to my website, gobroncobilly.com. There is an email form there to contact me. And you can also follow me on Instagram, Go Bronco Billy, Twitter, Go Bronco Billy. Any of those channels will work to get a hold of me. So thanks for the time. I really appreciate it. And you all have a great weekend. I'm going to be training my butt off.
That's right.
Because I'm 4 weeks from Western States.
Woo.
Giddy up.
Yeah. Woo.
Go on, giddy up. And,
giddy up.
Yeah. And thank you, LiveRunBoundless family, once again for joining me for another episode of the LiveRunBoundless show, living a life beyond the boundaries that you set on yourself. And Jeff, Go Bronco Billy, live beyond the boundaries. You've been doing it for like almost 20 years and still going strong. That's a great
Giddy up.
So until next time, family,